Actual Fluency Podcast, episode 29.
Welcome to the Actual Fluency Podcast, the podcast that gives you the tools and inspiration to learn languages faster and more efficiently. And now your host, Chris Broholm.
Today's episode of the Actual Fluency Podcast is brought to you in partnership with Audible Audiobooks. Get your free audiobook by going to audibletrial.com/fluency. Hello. This is the Actual Fluency Podcast for language learners and aspiring polyglots, or actual polyglots if you are one. It's for everyone, basically. I'm here to provide you with motivation, inspiration, and empowerment that language learning truly is accessible to just about everyone. Or let's say actually everyone. This week's episode features Judith Meyer, who is here on the third episode of the podcast. So if you haven't yet listened to episode 3, which is one of the very popular episodes of the podcast, I suggest you go back and listen to that before listening to this. Before I send you over to the interview with Judith, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being a listener and making the show awesome. You know, it's basically you are the reason I'm doing this. And sometimes I forget to acknowledge that. So I just want to say thank you for listening. That's the most important thing, getting it out there. And the second little thing I want to mention is that if you're a big fan of the show, and you want to get the first 25 episodes conveniently bundled up and labeled, so you can easily transfer them to a mobile device, a tablet, or whatever. And then I'm currently running a closed beta test of a bundle with those exact episodes where when you purchase the bundle, you also get access to a kind of a package of previously unreleased features. And there's an exclusive episode, there's some exclusive interviews, and there's some exclusive videos and stuff. If you are interested in beta testing this product for me, and basically beta testing is just to test out the sales process, the presentation, the content, and the price point and everything, feel free to send me an email at chris@actualfluency.com and just put podcast bundle in the headline. And everyone who's invited to take part in the beta program will receive a discount voucher for the bundle. And also the first few people who contact me will also get a free $10 voucher for italki. So you can go ahead and book your language learning lesson without cost, or at least, get most of it funded. I know that most tutors do charge more than $10, but this is what we have to work with. And as I mentioned, just send me an email if you're interested, and I'll give you the link. And all that I ask in return is that you just fill in a little questionnaire about the process and give me any feedback that you might have. So enough about that, and we're almost ready to go to the interview Judith Meyer. Before we get into that interview, I just want to be completely transparent. And in the interview, me and Judith will be talking about her new service, LearnYu, which is an automatic service for learning Chinese. And it may seem as though, we're pitching it quite hard to you guys, but in fact, first of all, it's a free service, and it always will be free, Judith told me. And secondly, I've tried the service myself. I've been beta testing it, and I also supported it with $100 of my own money. So I believe in this product, and it's not kind of a it's not a sales pitch for the sake of sales pitching it. Judith is a good friend of mine, and she puts out quality stuff. So half of this episode is a lot about learning Chinese specifically, what is good about, how to learn the characters and what should I learn first. And then the second half is kind of going into making an automated learning process. And in there, we get into a lot of the qualities that LearnYu has and how the process has been for her. If you want to support the LearnYu project, the Indiegogo donation drive is still open for a few more days. So please, if you are interested in learning Chinese and supporting the development of a much, much, much more easier way to learn Chinese, then go on to LearnYu.com. That's LearnYu.com. LearnYu.com and just check it out. It's free to try out. Well, it will be free for everything, but right now you can try out the first lesson just to see how it is. And then when it's out of beta, you'll be given access to all of it for absolutely no money. So I really appreciate these initiatives in the language learning world where people are kind of given tools that allow them to learn languages cheaper. I mean, free and more efficiently as well. That's kind of what the whole show is about, discovering these things. And I will be learning Chinese in about, I'm thinking next year maybe, but it might be the year after. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that I want to learn Chinese at some point. It's just too cool with the characters and the tone. So that's all for me this time. And as always, have a great day, and I hope you enjoy listening to the podcast. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, everyone. Today's guest really requires no introduction, but I'm going to give you one anyway. She was the guest of episode 3 of this very podcast, and she hosted the highly praised Polyglot Gathering in Berlin. Apart from these great feats, she also speaks some 13 languages and is currently busy promoting her new automagic Chinese course. Judith, it's so good to have you back on the show. How have you been?
I've been doing really well. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. And of course, for the listeners out there who didn't listen to the 3rd episode yet, it would be wise for them to go back and maybe listen to some of your language story, because we won't really have time to go into that. But the interesting bit that's going on right now is Chinese.
Yes.
So we decided to sit down and record an episode about how to best learn Chinese. And I guess the first question that anyone would ask you is, isn't it difficult to learn Chinese?
Well, yes and no. I mean, basic Chinese is possibly the easiest language you've ever learned, because the grammar is basically non-existent and the vocabulary is very versatile. You need very few words and you can say a lot. So just to get a grounding in Chinese, to say tourist level or beginner level, to talk about yourself, your friends, it's quite easy to do. But then as you progress, it gets quite hard because of the cultural influences.
Mm-hmm. And also, I suppose the writing, reading and writing?
Yeah, the writing system was actually quite a lot of trouble. So yeah, when I say it's very easy, I mean if you're going to go for a spoken approach and learn how to speak the language.
Right.
Just based on pinyin.
Exactly. And when you first got into Chinese, how did you attack it, so to speak? What got you interested and what did you first do?
I was always fascinated by Chinese. I think I was 14 or so. I already knew that I wanted to learn Chinese eventually.
Oh wow!
Now I wasn't courageous enough to do it then because I had never studied the language in self-study. But when I was 18, I read about a Chinese learning competition, which was only open to high school students. And I was in my last year of high school, so I knew I had to study Chinese then. I had to start.
Wow, so you started really early.
Yeah, and I self-studied Chinese, which wasn't very bright because it was such a different language. I had never studied a non-European language until then, so I didn't get very far, but it was good enough for the competition, and I won a 6-week trip to China to attend an intensive language course there. So that really helped. Right.
So you got a lot of help to learn it in the beginning.
Yes, I did.
How would you go back and learn it if you had to learn it completely on your own?
I would probably use the internet a lot because there's so many resources out there right now. I think the Chinese government and also other organizations are pouring a lot of money into learning Chinese. So you can find some really cool stuff online.
Right.
And then, yeah, you need to make a holistic approach. You need to hear the language a lot. You need to speak it a lot. You need to write it a lot. You need to read it a lot, and just get used to this language. It's not a language where you can get by translating from your own language or from another language. Like if you're learning Spanish and you're an Italian speaker, you can probably do that. But to learn Chinese, you really have to have a lot of input and get a lot of corrections on your output.
Right, and it's not a language you learn in 3 months.
No, definitely not.
You need
a tourist level, like I said, but beyond that, no. It's a very complex language with a long history, longer than any other language that you may be learning.
Right.
So, yeah, there's a lot to study, especially at the more advanced levels. A lot of expressions that are thousands of years old and that you need to be aware of. And yeah.
Right.
It's very beautiful too.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm looking forward to studying it. And of course, we've been talking about Mandarin. You didn't get into Cantonese? You didn't find it exciting or anything?
I mean, Mandarin is already enough for me. I'm still studying it 10 years later, so.
Right.
But the other dialects are not really useful. Maybe if you're going to talk to the expat community, there are a lot of Cantonese speakers or other dialects. But in China itself, everyone speaks Mandarin. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's not like with Arabic that people are not used to speaking Mandarin. They're used to speaking Mandarin. They speak Mandarin every day. So I don't really see the point of learning Cantonese. It's more like learning Swiss German, I guess.
Right. But that would be fun too.
Do it. Yeah. It's a beautiful language. You can do it. But it's not really urgent.
Exactly. And the other, I suppose, difference, other than the character system, is the tonal system.
Yes.
How did you first kind of perceive this, and how did that change over the years, the tone system?
A lot of people tell me that the tones must be very difficult, but I never thought so. Mm-hmm. Because there is an analogy that works very well with German and I guess also English, but not so much French or so. That is, we're actually using the tones. We're using the tones in our everyday speech. And we're just not using them actively, we're not aware of them. But if you're thinking, this is a story I always tell, works pretty well. So you imagine like a little boy, and he sees an airplane in the sky, and so he goes, there, and in German was really da, which works better for Chinese, because Chinese doesn't have this there sound. No. So it was da, and that would be the first tone. And now there's his father, and he can't really see what the boy is pointing at, so he goes da, there. That's the second tone.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And then the little boy imitates it like a little bit ridiculously, maybe a bit. So like da, there, and that's the third tone. And then he says it with a lot of stress, affirming it. There, that's the fourth tone.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're actually using all these tones, at least if you're speaking a somewhat melodic language like German or English. Wow. And it's just a matter of learning to use them actively and to avoid using the tones when it's not appropriate. Like Europeans generally have this tendency to raise the tone when asking a question, and you mustn't do that in Chinese because you're changing the meaning.
Oh,
so
right.
It takes getting used to, but it's not at all impossible.
Right.
The Chinese people are also used to foreigners using bad tones, so it's not so bad to use something different.
Right, and I guess it's just one of these things where people don't really know about it, and so they fear that it's much harder than it really is, or much bigger. And
Mandarin only has 4 tones. The Cantonese and the other dialects have a lot more.
Yeah. So, I mean, just go for it. Yeah. That's kind of the what we're going for. So, do you have any kind of ninja tips and tricks for people who want to learn Chinese? I guess the kind of the speaking and listening is kind of obvious, but are there any tips for maybe the writing or reading that you realized along the way?
Yeah, I spent a lot of, actually several years, just able to write like 600 to 800 characters, and I never got beyond that, no matter how much I tried, because beyond that point, the characters all started to look the same.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that was a big problem, and not being able to learn more characters, I was also not able to raise more vocabulary, to read more stuff, to write more stuff, so that was a real problem. And then I encountered the Heisig method for Japanese, and what it basically does is it tells you to split the characters into their component parts, because the characters are not like squiggles without any meaning on them. They consist of different parts, like about 200 distinct parts. Just very few of them are regularly used. And then you can kind of create a story around these parts, which allow you to memorize even the most difficult or the most complex characters. And with that approach, it's a lot easier to learn characters. Now, originally this was proposed by Heisig or other authors who weren't so successful in promoting the method. But for Chinese, it took a bit of time, but finally there are also some books using this method, like the learning Chinese characters book or reading and writing Chinese characters. Both of these are very good books that use this method for Chinese.
Great.
And originally I tried to do a bit by myself, just looking at the characters and seeing what kind of parts there are, but it's really better to follow this kind of book that has a regular approach. Same with Japanese, you only have to learn a few of those, or it's not really important if you don't know a character yet, because you can still keep using hiragana, katakana. But with Chinese, it makes a lot of sense to go with a book that teaches them from the most basic, the most simple combinations up to the more complex ones, and also keeping in mind how common the characters are. Because you could be learning, I don't know, thousands of characters, and you want to be learning the ones that are the most common ones first, so that you can keep studying your textbook or whatever.
Right, focusing on frequency.
Yeah.
That's something we've heard quite a lot in language learning recently. For characters, how many characters would it take to be, let's say, able to read the newspaper or something? A kind of simple yet daily use text.
Newspapers, well, the difficult part are really the names. If you have a lot of Chinese politicians' names, then they may be using really rare characters.
Oh, right.
But beyond that, I think 3,000 is okay. I think the Chinese government even claims 2,200 would be enough. I'm not so sure about that.
Right, but can you from a text deduce what is a name and what is not?
Yeah, that's pretty easy once you know the characters around it.
Okay, so even if you didn't know the politician's character, the character for the name, you'd still be able to say, "Oh, politician X" or
exactly.
whatever. Okay, well, that's a relief that you didn't need to know every single character to kind of decryptify the sentence or text, indeed. All right, so that's some great Chinese language learning tips and tricks, and as I've been kind of saying a little loosely, I guess I'll make it official that I'll be learning Chinese as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I've decided to go. I still don't know if I want to learn Cantonese first or during or after or even at all, but I still have some time. I still have Russian this year and Esperanto as well, so it's not going to be this year, but I'm definitely going to learn it. Mm-hmm. And as always on the website and the blog and here in the podcast, I'm looking for new methods to optimize the language learning process, because I think that's the one strength we have as a technologically advanced people, I guess, is that we can always make it easier and faster to learn languages. And some methods are great and some are not so great. But today, the one we're going to talk about is LearnYu. Mm-hmm. And what exactly is LearnYu? Because I could say LearnYu is a Chinese course, but that's not quite covering it, does it?
It's quite different from regular Chinese courses. I mean, obviously it teaches you Chinese, so in that sense it's a course. But what it really does is it creates the course as you go along. So this is a system that, of course, has a database of what you need to know for certain levels of competence. But then if you go along and you find something difficult, then the system will generate more and more exercises for this until you understand it. And once you understand it, it will present you with something new. And that keeps repeating. So if you understand something quickly, you'll quickly see something new. If you find something difficult, you'll get a lot of practice until you go on. So it's really adapting to you personally as a learner.
Oh, great. And how did you, let's go back quite a lot of time, I can imagine. How did you say, well, I don't think there's a good enough course to teach Chinese? Like, how did that moment happen?
Well, I've always been a bit dissatisfied with the level of Chinese teaching, especially when I started out. A lot of it was very traditional, a lot of memorization, a lot of translation, a lot of just... You keep doing it over and over and you'll eventually get it, that kind of attitude. Right. So, yeah, nowadays you can find Western kind of courses, communicative method courses, but I keep seeing that people don't really wind up with a good level after all that. I'm taking some classes here locally in Berlin and also online at Dalarna University. And a lot of my classmates have studied Chinese for 10 years or the like, and they're still not really fluent in speaking. They still, if they do a presentation, they read what they have to present. If they ask to talk about the topic freely, not really able to say much. And I think that this is really the problem with the current approach, is that you don't get enough opportunities to speak, and you don't get enough opportunities to use the language. You also not get enough exposure to see the same words in different contexts to see how it might be used. Now, this is quite fine for European languages. If you see a word Italian lavorare, okay, to work, you know, you can use it pretty much the same as the English word to work, and that's fine. So you just transfer new knowledge, and that's it. But with Chinese, you need to see the same word in different contexts and to have a chance to use it yourself, to try it out, and that's basically the idea that I had for LearnYu, is to give you the chance to see the words and use them a lot and have a very active kind of language learning experience. You're not just reading text. You're always actively involved. If you're reading something, then LearnYu also asks you to translate it. If another exercise might be to translate something to Chinese, or it might ask you to respond to a prompt in conversation, to have a conversation with the computer, just to get you using the language and not just absorbing it passively.
Right. And that probably doesn't only happen with Chinese. That's classroom style learning for every language. Yeah. I mean, if people go to German classes in Sweden, for instance, they might know how to read and have a pretty good vocabulary, but ask them to go to Berlin and speak to anyone, and they'll be, they'll be out of practice. Or so you incorporate that active approach from day one. That was part of the philosophy.
Yes, and actually, I had a few teachers already asked me if they could use LearnYu with their students as a way to improve the classroom experience, because there's just no way, if you have 20, 30 people in a class, there's just no way you can give everyone the chance to use the language as much as they need to. Right. But what I was saying is not just applicable to the classroom. I've also found this with self-study courses that people are doing. They don't present the words in different contexts. So you have a text of, 1 page if you're lucky, and after that you have 1 or maybe 2 pages of vocabulary, and most of these words only appear once in the text, and then in the next lesson they may not appear at all. Right. So this is kind of okay for European languages because you just doing a mental equation, lavorare is work. But for Chinese, you really need to see them in different contexts, see them multiple times, and review them often enough to keep the knowledge alive.
And the brain is incredibly powerful, so if you show the brain enough examples, it will work out the connection of the word itself, right? So that's incredibly powerful. But one thing is having like a vision and an idea, but and I know you have a background in programming, so maybe that's not the hard part, but still creating a whole course from scratch, that must be a huge investment of time and effort. How did you just get started? I mean, what happened?
Well, I was just finished with my university degree, and I was looking for something to do. So I thought, okay, I'm going to change how people learn Chinese. And this was, of course, it was a lot of work. This was about a year ago. So, of course, I spent a lot of time on that. I also invested a lot of money because I can't do everything by myself. I had to hire Chinese native speakers, Chinese teachers, people to record audio, also to help me with other things I couldn't do around the site. But yeah, being able to program is a big help. It allowed me to create most of the site, most of the innovative part of it by myself, and also it allowed me to have a side job to keep generating a bit of that money.
Yeah, I can see. And what you just said I find quite important as well, because when you're designing a Chinese course, even if you've studied it for 10 years, you really need to make sure that the content is perfect, right? So having native people record the audio, so the kind of the accents and the way it sounds is perfect, and also that all the text material is absolutely correct. I guess that must have been a big kind of a priority for you.
Of course, yeah. Actually, one of the sites that inspired me to create LearnYu was Duolingo, because they first had the idea to apply computers to language learning and try to guess what you might need to learn, or guess how far along you are, or what would give you a difficulty. And there are a lot of things that I don't like about their site, and one of the things is that they use machine voices.
Oh, really?
No, that's a big no-no for me. I mean, for some languages, they're kind of okay, but for others, they sound totally unnatural, and I would never want to learn a language and have that kind of accent sound like a computer. It's so off-turning for a conversation.
Right.
So, yes, my priority was to get everything recorded by native speakers, and also to record a lot of parts in the system. Whenever you do an exercise, no matter what kind of exercise, you will always hear the Chinese pronunciation afterwards, so that you'll really burn the sound into your mind.
Right, and keep learning that way. And you said it took a year to get from. Right now, we're in the middle of the or nearing the end of the Indiegogo promotion campaign. But you just kind of released publicly. Do you call it a beta version or?
Yeah, I mean it's it was a closed beta, so we've been testing the site with testers for several months now, and I wanted to get some more broad testing by people who may not have experience learning Chinese, so that I could get different kind of bug reports and different kind of suggestions for improvement. So and it's technically a closed beta. You need an invitation to participate. But we also said if people support us in this Indiegogo campaign, then of course we're also going to let them use the site early. It's the least we can do.
Right, and there is already a lesson on there, lesson 1, right? Module 1? What's the name of it?
Lesson 1 is the one that we have publicly to have like a proof of concept, like a demonstration for the ones who are not sure what kind of method LearnYu is using. So that's what you can do even without being invited.
Right.
But if you're invited, then we have more lessons and we will soon have a lot more.
Yeah, right. It's not. This isn't a concept. You actually have a lot already done.
Yes.
And the Indiegogo campaign is a way to get more done, even more done.
Yes,
and
exactly.
faster. Because right now, I believe it is targeting the HSK level 1.
Yes.
And your vision is to go all the way up to the highest level they target, right?
Yes, up to HSK 6, which according to the Chinese government is C2.
That's that's a very high level.
Yeah, they make it easy because they have these guidelines, like which vocabulary do you need to know, which kind of sentences do you need to be able to handle. So at least in terms of mastering the test, it will be possible. Now, I can't promise that you'll be able to have conversations at level 6 because that also requires a lot of practice in the real world, having conversations with real people, not just a computer. But It's definitely going that way. And I think if we can do this much, it will be a really, really awesome thing.
Yeah. What are some of the struggles of making a computer teach us languages? Are there any limitations to the system itself, or what kind of struggles did you have when you were developing the let's say the brain behind it?
The biggest struggle is that the computer doesn't really understand language. So there are some sentences that we know mean the same thing, but the computer won't know that. So if I have an exercise where you're supposed to respond in a conversation, then there may be dozens of ways that you could respond that all mean the same thing. And that's what we have to teach the computer. That it's okay, no matter which way you respond, that it's going to be okay.
Right. So you have to kind of manually input answer keys, so to speak.
Yes.
I can imagine, because otherwise how would the computer know?
Yeah, I mean, getting one answer is the easy part. You'd expect that, right?
Right.
To input, okay, the question is, how are you? The answer is, I'm fine.
Right.
And then you have to think, which other responses could people give that would also be correct and that the computer should accept?
Right.
That's the hard part.
Yeah. And there's a lot of languages a lot of answers for that particular question.
Yeah.
I'm fine, I'm alright, I'm well. Alright, but you're still finding that a computer can boost or, let's say, empower language learning beyond that of let's say, a book or, let's say, a recorded course. The benefits are that it adapts to you, to the unique person. And are there any other benefits that we haven't discussed about having a computer kind of teach your language?
It has infinite patience. I mean,
that's important.
Compared to a tutor, especially when it comes to practicing pronunciation, of course, you can ask the computer to play a song for you again and again and again and again. And if you keep making a stupid grammar mistake, it won't ever say you're stupid. It will just give you more exercises.
That's a very, very good bonus point there, I would say. Infinite patience on LearnYu. So you can't break it even if you make a mistake 1,000 times.
Yeah.
It'll still help you and try to get back to that particular word that you're having trouble with. All right, fantastic. And what's it going to cost? That's a question that people are probably going to ask. What's it going to cost?
When the site is publicly available, it's going to be free.
All right.
At least the basic version. That is, you can study Chinese with it, and it will be free. And then what we're hoping to do is to sell extra materials that are not essential, that you could also be getting elsewhere. For example, a book on learning Chinese, or audio materials that you could take with you on your iPod, or stuff like that.
So convenience mostly,
Yes.
actually, or bonus features.
I think convenience sums it up pretty well.
Right.
If you want to conveniently learn Chinese, you probably want one of the extra materials.
Right, and also if you really like the course, once you've used it, to show your support, to show your appreciation.
Definitely.
I mean, I do that all the time with tons of things where it's free to join, free to enter, but then they might have some kind of bonus thing or premium membership or something. And I always chip in because of the value that I have been given up front. I think somebody called it the thank you economy is what we're living in, right? Mm-hmm. Where a lot of stuff is free to do, free to learn, free to whatever, but people thank you afterwards. And I think you've set up a nice kind of framework for that with the LearnYu system. And if people don't like it, they haven't spent anything on it.
Right.
Exactly. So
this is another big difference to most language courses. There are a lot of companies out there who make money by selling you the course, and then they don't care if you learn the language or not. Maybe
Right.
They hope you don't learn the language, and then you buy the next course that they publish.
Oh no, I really dread to think about how many dollars have been spent on Rosetta Stone's courses and not led to any kind of ability in the language.
I don't know, there's a lot of people recommending Rosetta Stone, but
Really?
they don't seem to be the people who are really good at languages.
They don't seem to speak the language. Well, yeah, I'm just, that's a nightmare for me right there. But anyway, it's been a great pleasure to talk to you, and as always. And I think there's about 6 days left of the Indiegogo campaign, and I really encourage people to go and sign up and support the cause. Firstly, because Judith is an amazing person, and secondly, because Chinese is a big language, 800 million to 1 billion Mandarin speakers. I mean, you're really missing out on a lot if you're at least not have a little bit of knowledge in Chinese. So go to Indiegogo now. I think they have a fancy short link for it, don't they? igg.me/at/Chinese.
Yeah, or igme at Chinese.
Right, igme at Chinese. Or you can just go to LearnYu.com.
Yeah, of course.
That's a big button on the front page.
Yeah, and there you can also try the first lesson to see what the system feels like.
Of course, that would be obvious. And LearnYu is YU, not
Yes.
YOU.
This is a play on words, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah, because YU in Chinese it will be pronounced yu, and it means language. So it's like learn the language, learn Chinese language.
So learn language or learn yourself language,
Yeah.
so to speak. All right, fantastic. And I have been testing it a little bit, and I really like it so far. And you also put my review on the Indiegogo page, so people can read that if they're interested in my little 2 cents. And I'm just looking forward to getting started for real next year.
Awesome.
That's about it. And I'll send you lots of Skype messages about Chinese questions.
Yes, you do that.
But thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Actual Fluency Podcast. For more information, be sure to check out actualfluency.com. Until next time, enjoy learning and have a great day. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the end of this podcast. Before you go, I just want to thank today's show sponsor, Audible. And as a thank you to the listeners, Audible is currently offering a free audio book to the Actual Fluency audience. And basically you go to audibletrial.com/fluency. That's the link for Actual Fluency listeners. And at this URL, you're given the option to sign up for a free 30-day trial, and you can download any audiobook from 150,000 titles.
They have multiple languages as well if you're practicing some of the bigger languages. So I would definitely encourage you to go and check out Audible. They are the biggest provider. Just be sure you cancel your membership before 30 days are up. Then you will be given the book absolutely for free. It'll be tied to your account, so there'll be no problem there. But that would be at audibletrial.com/fluency. And as always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you later.